When I think of that, I think of a homeowner who has needs that exceed their immediate grasp, and they turn to a home equity loan, something they don't want to do, but that's the only resource they have at times. And if a push comes to shove, maybe that's what we have to do. But between the other structures, the road structure, the infrastructures, roads, and things like that, and the liner, we've got to find a way. And if it can't come out of the budget, then we've got to do one of two things: increase the budget, or the funds for the budget, rather than increase our income, or find some other solutions. If not through grants and other aids, then we're going to have to look seriously at doing this, because none of us want to deal with the reality if that thing fails. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Art Tolis.
Okay, thank you. So when I was on the council, and I apologize for continuing to say that, but I think it's relevant. I mean, these are a lot of these issues that we had addressed, and that the projection was 2029, and that was back in 2019 when we were evaluating the experts as to what they said is likely going to be the time frame that that's going to be replaced. But I think we're missing one possible key to success with that lake and the lake liner, and the fact that the sanitary district is intimately involved with this town and with the overflow of water. Right now they have excess water. I spoke with one of the directors, and they're trying to figure out what are they going to do with the rest of the extra water. They need that lake just as much as we love that lake. So I think that there's a conversation that needs to be discussed. We did it with the bathrooms, with the facilities, to revamp the wells at the Fountain Park. So I think it's very reasonable to talk to the sanitary district and see how we can work with them as a partnership to make sure that that lake and the bubblers and every aspect of that central park that we have in Fountain Hills is maintained. And that's something that those discussions should be happening now.
Thank you. Next, Robert Wallace.
Well, I think it's important that we don't get to the point where we're about to need to replace the liner, and then we've only got a third of the money available to take care of it. As though we couldn't have anticipated that, maybe have done more aggressive saving. In the short term, I agree, we got to do what we've got to do, including the B word, including auditing our budget a little bit tighter, allocating funds from different buckets into a bucket that prioritizes this. The same deal does go for the streets. We have the same situation. We have, very expensive costs, and while the council or some feel like the streets have been fully funded, I think we need to be more aggressive in making sure that we have multiple people working on it if we are maxing out the capacities of those who are on it to make sure that we're up to speed. We don't want to keep chasing the tail. We want to get ahead of it. And so I think a more aggressive saving will be necessary.
Thank you. Next, Gail Earl.
As everyone else stated here too, that fountain is what our town's about. I remember in 1972, coming up there to see it. All we had in Fountain Hills was a fountain and dirt. And I have pictures of that. My 50-year-old brother, oh my gosh, I'm getting old, was a little 4-year-old at the time. But I think it's really important that it's good that we have at least a third of that. We definitely need more money to set aside. But I would like us to look at contract grant funding and possibly use that for the streets too. We need to look into that. And the other option for that is also the sanitary district. Since they utilize it, they really should have some skin in the game financially. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Rick Watts.
I think this is like any other business decision when you're going to do some capital expenditure. You look at what the actual costs are going to be, so we look at what the capital expenditure would be for the lake liner. We look at the roads, and I hear that the roads are part and parcel, and we're putting money aside, and we've got it covered, but the roads are actually failing quicker than we can put money aside to fix them. I think 20 years ago, when a lake liner was first installed, we knew that that lake liner had a limited life. That's fundamental to business, knowing what the life expectancy of any product is. And at that point in time, we should have put a reserve account in place that said, we're going to start putting $10 a month away, so that now we have the amount of money that we need. I think we should have a serious conversation about finding out who's going to contribute, whether it's a sanitary district. And Art's right, that the sanitary district has an excess water issue, that the reservation won't allow us to dump the water into the river. Where are we going to put that water? But they're contributory to the problem. What do we have saved? What do we need? What's the minimum we've got? And I'm not going to be bashful about using the quote-unquote B word. We need a bond. That's what it comes down to. And whether we face it or not, we don't have the 18 million. We don't have the 50 or 60 million dollars. We're not going to get it out of the TPT that we've got now. Transaction privilege tax is slightly different than sales tax. It was reduced when we went to TPT. So when you talk about all these things, it was no forward thinking to anticipate the need 20 years from the date that liner was put in. That's leadership.
Thank you. Okay, we have one question remaining. Before we jump into that, I want to remind everyone in the audience that inside your programs is a QR code. We have a limited time tonight, but if you would like to ask any of the candidates additional questions, you can scan that QR code, plug in your question, and we will make sure that it gets to the candidate, and then they can respond at their discretion. So we'll now move on to question number 5. Why do you want to do this? What skills do you possess that qualifies you for this position, and why do you feel like your presence will benefit Fountain Hills? We'll start with Robert Wallace.
Well, I'm going to do this because I need to put my body in a position where it's actively serving the community. And there are a lot of capacities that I serve the community, the country, our interests, but my local community where I live, I feel like I owe the most to, and I want to give myself to. This is an important role in that whoever is part of this is going to be responsible for making sure they are objective, they are open-minded, they are listening to the general public. And you're not just guaranteed that with just anybody. You can't take that for granted, whether or not somebody is going to be objective when it counts. And I want to offer myself into a position where I can make sure myself, and for the interest of everybody, that everybody is being heard, instead of simply watching people be ignored or watching people feel powerless, because I'm a citizen too. I don't want that, and I want to ensure that everybody feels like they get a fair shake in the local government.
Thank you. Next, Matthew Corrigan.
Well, the shorter answer is I don't. And I didn't want to be a candidate for town council. The way this happened was I started attending town council meetings and started speaking out about different issues at town council, and also planning and zoning and school board, which has nothing to do with town council, but I thought I might mention it. And I was actually encouraged by a couple of people to consider running for town council. And I kept saying no, 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 and finally I said yes, because I think there's a truism in the fact that there's a time to speak and there's a time to act. And I think it's important to preserve this town as it is, and at the same time let it grow naturally with the original master plan in mind, honoring the ordinances that we have. And so I know I can bring those talents that I had in my career by listening to people, giving them solutions to those problems. And I can do that on town council. And that's why I'm in this, because I want to preserve and protect and defend Fountain Hills for the future.
Thank you. Next, Art Tolis.
Thank you. I